The silence of the abandoned mining colony pressed against Kalen Briggs like a physical weight. 3 weeks since the corporate evacuation, and the Sector 9 outpost had become a graveyard of rusted metal and broken dreams. His boots echoed through empty corridors as he methodically dismantled the last of the atmospheric processors, each component tagged and catalogued for salvage. Kalen had volunteered to stay behind. Someone had to properly shut down the reactor core and strip the valuable tech before the scavengers arrived. The isolation didn't bother him. After 15 years maintaining deep space mining operations, he'd grown comfortable with solitude. That's why the sound from the supply tunnels made him freeze. A soft scraping, like metal against stone. Then silence. Kalen set down his plasma cutter and listened. The outpost's automated systems hummed their familiar tune, but underneath, there it was again. Movement. He grabbed his flashlight and descended into the supply network, a warren of service tunnels that honeycombed the colony's lower levels. The beam cut through dusty air, illuminating abandoned crates and forgotten equipment. Something had been here recently, disturbed dust, scattered debris arranged into what looked like a makeshift shelter. Hello. His voice echoed back empty. A flash of movement caught his eye. In the far corner, pressed against a support beam, crouched a small figure. Pale purple skin gleamed in the flashlight's glare, and dark curly hair framed a face that was unmistakably alien yet heartbreakingly young. The girl, she couldn't be more than 14 in human years, stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. Her clothing was tattered, her frame thin with malnutrition. She trembled but didn't run, as if frozen between fear and exhaustion. "Hey," Kalen said softly, switching off the harsh flashlight and activating his wrist light's gentler setting. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't understand standard, but something in his tone made her shoulders relax slightly. He slowly reached into his pack and produced a ration bar, holding it out. "Food," he said simply. Her eyes fixed on the offering, and for a moment, hunger warred with caution. Then, with trembling hands, she reached forward and took it. As she ate with desperate efficiency, Kalen felt something shift in his chest, a protective instinct he hadn't experienced in years. Whatever had brought her here, wherever her people had gone, she was alone now. And somehow, that made her his responsibility. 3 days passed before Luma spoke her first word in Standard. "Kalen," she said, pointing at him with a shy smile that transformed her entire face. He'd been patiently teaching her basic vocabulary while constructing a proper shelter near the reactor core, where the ambient heat would keep her warm. "That's right," he encouraged, securing another panel to the small but sturdy structure. "And you are?" She touched her chest. "Luma." The name suited her, it meant light in some old Earth language he half remembered. Each day, she grew a little braver, a little more trusting. She'd watch him work with curious eyes, occasionally handing him tools when he pointed. Her movements were graceful despite her obvious weakness, and he noticed how she seemed to sense his moods before he expressed them. The calm chatter from other salvage teams grew more insistent. "Report any survivors to planetary enforcement," Captain Torres had ordered. Standard protocol. But when Kalen looked at Luma carefully arranging the few belongings he'd given her, a blanket, some clothes from the colony's lost and found, a small data pad loaded with basic language lessons, he couldn't bring himself to make that call. "My people," Luma said one evening, her standard improving rapidly, "work here. Contract finish, they leave." Her voice carried a pain that transcended language barriers. "They left you behind?" Kalen asked gently. She shook her head. "I hide. Scared. When evacuation come, I stay in tunnels." Her eyes met his. "My species, we bond through trust. Not touch like humans. Trust is sacred." The weight of her words settled over him. By staying, by feeding her, by building her shelter, he'd unknowingly entered into something profound in her culture. The responsibility should have frightened him, but instead, it felt right. "I won't leave you," he promised, and watched her face light up with relief. That night, as she slept safely in her shelter, Kaelin made a decision. The salvage work could wait. Some things were more important than corporate timelines and standard protocols. He'd given his word to a scared girl who trusted him with her life. And humans, he thought with quiet determination, don't abandon those who depend on them. Weeks melted into a comfortable routine. Luma's standard improved dramatically, and with it came stories of her past. Her species, the Vellani, were natural empaths. They could sense emotional states and form deep bonds based on trust and mutual understanding. Her family had been contract workers, skilled at reading the emotional needs of mixed-species crews. "We feel what others feel," she explained one evening as they shared a meal. "Makes us valuable to corporations, but also, vulnerable." Kaelin understood. Empathic species were often exploited in the outer colonies, their abilities used to maintain crew harmony while they themselves were treated as little more than equipment. No wonder she'd been terrified when the evacuation came. As her health improved, subtle changes emerged. Her movements became more confident, her laughter more frequent. She was growing up before his eyes, the frightened child slowly transforming into a young woman. The realization brought complicated feelings he tried to suppress. "You're troubled," Luma observed one morning, that empathic sensitivity picking up on his internal conflict. "It's nothing," he deflected, but her knowing look suggested otherwise. Their relationship deepened through shared experiences. When she fell ill with a fever, he stayed by her side for 2 days, cooling her with damp cloths and monitoring her vital signs. When nightmares of scavengers woke her, he would sit nearby until she felt safe enough to sleep again. "In my culture," she said during one of these quiet moments, "when someone cares for you during illness, it creates a bond debt. A sacred obligation." "You don't owe me anything," Kaelin replied. "Not debt to repay," she corrected, her English now fluent. "Bond debt means connection. Permanent connection between souls." The intensity in her eyes made his breath catch. She was no longer the frightened child he'd found in the tunnels. At 17 now, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her empathic abilities allowing her to understand him in ways no one ever had. "Kaelin," she said softly, "I can feel your conflict. You care for me, but you're afraid of those feelings." He couldn't deny it. "You're young, Luma. And I'm supposed to protect you." "Protection and love aren't opposites," she replied with wisdom beyond her years. "Among my people, they're often the same thing." The scavengers arrived on a Tuesday morning, their ships landing with the subtle vibration that meant trouble. Kaelin had been expecting them. Salvage rights to abandoned colonies were valuable, and word had spread about the Sector 9 outpost. "Stay in the shelter," he told Luma, checking the charge on his plasma cutter. "Whatever happens, don't come out until I say it's safe." Through the security feeds, he watched them spread through the facility, a rough crew of mixed species, armed and looking for anything valuable. Most were content to strip copper wire and atmospheric processors, but their leader, a scarred human named Vex, seemed more interested in the personal quarters. "Heard there might be survivors," Vex told his crew. "Alien survivors are worth good money to the right buyers." Kaelin's blood went cold. He'd hidden Luma's presence well, but these weren't casual looters. They were hunters. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Vex found the shelter's concealed entrance and peered inside, his eyes lighting up when he spotted Luma. Well, he grinned, showing gold teeth. "A Vellani. Do you know how much empaths sell for in the outer systems?" "She's not for sale," Kaelin said, stepping into view with his plasma cutter raised. "Easy, engineer. Just business." Vex's crew fanned out behind him, weapons drawn. "Corporate abandoned this place. Everything left behind is salvage, including her. She's not property. Everything's property if you know the right buyers." Vex's hand moved to his sidearm. "Walk away, and we'll cut you in for 10%. Kaelin's answer was to activate his plasma cutter. The brilliant beam carved through the air, forcing Vex to dive for cover. The fight that followed was brutal and desperate, Kalen against 5 armed scavengers in the narrow confines of the reactor room. He fought with the fury of a man protecting someone he loved, using his knowledge of the facility's layout to outmaneuver his opponents. When Vex cornered him near the reactor core, Kalen made a choice that would have seemed insane to anyone else. He threatened to overload the reactor, turning the entire outpost into a crater. "You willing to die for one alien girl?" Vex demanded. "Are you willing to die for salvage rights?" Kalen countered, his hand hovering over the emergency override. The standoff lasted an eternity. Finally, Vex backed down. "She's not worth it," he muttered, signaling his crew to retreat. As their ships departed, Luma emerged from hiding to find Kalen bleeding but victorious. "You risked everything for me," she whispered. "I gave you my word," he replied simply. The aftermath of the confrontation changed everything between them. As Kalen recovered from his injuries, Luma cared for him with a tenderness that spoke of deeper feelings. She was 18 now, fully grown by the standards of both their species, and the bond between them had evolved into something neither could deny. "I've been thinking about what you said," Kalen told her one evening as they watched the sunset through the facility's observation deck. "About protection and love being the same thing. And..." Her voice was soft, hopeful. "I think I understand now. I don't just want to protect you, I want to build a life with you. If you'll have me." Her answer came in the form of a kiss, gentle and full of promise. In Volani culture, physical affection was reserved for the deepest bonds, and as their lips met, Kalen felt the full weight of her trust and love. "I've loved you since the day you gave me food," she admitted. "But I waited for you to see me as more than the scared girl you found." "I see you," he said, pulling her close. "I see the woman you've become, and I see our future together." They spent the next weeks preparing for departure. The outpost had served its purpose as a sanctuary, but now they needed to find a new home. Luma's empathic abilities would be valued on frontier worlds where mixed-species colonies needed skilled mediators. Kalen's engineering expertise would always be in demand. "Where will we go?" she asked as they loaded their few possessions onto his ship. "Wherever we want," he replied. "The galaxy's a big place, and we're not tied to anyone's contracts or expectations." As they lifted off from the abandoned colony, Luma watched the facility shrink below them. It had been a place of fear and abandonment, but also of love and new beginnings. "Thank you," she said, taking his hand as they entered hyperspace. "For what?" "For showing me what humans are really like. For keeping your word when others would have broken it." Kalen smiled, thinking of the scared girl he'd found in the supply tunnels and the confident woman sitting beside him now. "That's what we do," he said. "When we give our word, we keep it." Their ship disappeared into the stars, carrying them toward a future built on trust, love, and the unbreakable bond between a human who'd refused to abandon someone in need and the alien girl who'd taught him that sometimes the greatest strength comes from opening your heart to another.